Being an expert doesn't mean you have an answer for everything. Sometimes something comes along that even years of study can't explain. Archaeology is full of cases like that. We've learned a great amount about ancient civilizations from what they left behind, but not everything they left us makes sense. Certain objects, ruins, and remains have been studied for years, and experts still can't agree on what they were for, how they were made, or even why they existed. And today, we're looking at 15 ancient discoveries that are still baffling experts today. So, let's begin with number 15. The secret signs of Ice Age caves. When people think about the Ice Age, they naturally picture mammoths, freezing winters, and people painting animals on cave walls. But mixed among those familiar paintings is something far harder to explain. Across European caves, researchers have recorded strange dots, lines, circles, triangles, hand-like forms, and other geometric signs dating from roughly 10,000 to 40,000 years ago. Strangely enough, these marks often appear more frequently than drawings of humans or animals. Researcher Genevieve von Petzinger spent years comparing them across hundreds of sites and noticed that the same limited set of symbols kept appearing in places separated by enormous distances. In Spain's Colovera cave, similar markings survive deep underground, far beyond ordinary daylight. Nobody can read them now. Perhaps they marked places, carried spiritual meaning, recorded information, or represented an early form of communication. Whatever their purpose was, Ice Age people clearly understood these signs. Number 14, Kennewick Man. The history of America is as puzzling as asking why ancient people built the pyramids. We mean every answer seems to uncover another question, and Kennewick Man became a major one. 2 students found his skull beside the Columbia River in 1996, and tests soon placed him around 9,000 years in the past. But while scientists and Native American tribes were fighting over what should happen to the remains, the place where he was found changed. In 1998, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers covered the riverbank with nearly 2,000 tons of rock and soil, then planted thousands of trees there. The reason given was erosion control, yet critics feared valuable clues had been buried along with it. DNA showed Kennewick Man was closely related to modern Native Americans, and he was reburied in 2017. Still, that riverbank was never properly excavated. We know who he belonged to, but perhaps not the whole story of how he got there. Number 13. The Gribshunden figurehead. 5 centuries beneath the Baltic Sea should have reduced a wooden carving to almost nothing. Somehow, the figurehead of Gribshunden, a Danish warship lost in 1495, survived well enough for us to meet the creature carved into its bow. And it is a strange one. This wooden head has been described as a sea dragon or monstrous dog, with what appears to be a human figure trapped inside its jaws. Gribshunden served as the flagship of King Hans of Denmark and sank while carrying him toward political negotiations that could strengthen his control over Scandinavia. A fire broke out while the vessel waited offshore, sending the ship to the seabed. Fortunately for archaeologists, the Baltic's low salinity protected much of the wreck from destructive shipworms. The vessel may have measured around 100 feet and carried roughly 150 people. Researchers believe its construction can even help us understand ships from the age of Columbus. But that disturbing creature on its bow leaves another question. What was it supposed to represent? Number 12. The cemetery of Confucius. The thing no one can explain about this is how much history disappeared in only a few weeks. For more than 2,000 years, the cemetery of Confucius in Khufu had survived almost everything. Dynasties came and went, wars swept through China, and even the Japanese occupation left the cemetery unharmed. Then came 1966. During the Cultural Revolution, Red Guards entered the grounds and began tearing through a place generations had protected. More than 2,000 graves were reportedly opened, ancient trees were cut down, stone monuments were broken, and books and manuscripts went into the flames. Even the remains of a 76th-generation descendant of Confucius were dug up and desecrated. The cemetery survived and much was later repaired, but restoration can only replace what we know was there. It cannot bring back every document, inscription, or object that vanished. And that leaves one disturbing question. How much of Confucius's family history was destroyed before anyone had the chance to study it? Number 11. The stone faces of Rius. The woods around Rius, near Barcelona, have the sort of reputation locals usually learn long before visitors arrive. Between the trees are faces cut into stone, large human heads staring outward with expressions that reveal absolutely nothing. Their age is where the trouble starts. Stories sometimes describe them as ancient remains, yet there is no secure archaeological dating proving who carved them or when. Nearby sits another curiosity, a rock chamber or opening large enough for people to enter, while other strangely shaped stones have collected their own legends over the years. Tales of rituals, sacrifices, and forgotten worship naturally followed, helped along by reports of animal remains in the surrounding area. But folklore has become so tangled with the place that separating old evidence from newer additions is difficult. Perhaps that uncertainty is why Rius works on people so well. The carvings never give us a name, date, or explanation. They simply watch from the forest while everyone else supplies the story. Number 10. The hand of Irulegi. For more than 2,000 years, a small bronze hand carried a message nobody knew existed. Archaeologists found it in 2021 among the ruins of Irulegi, an Iron Age settlement in Navarre, Spain, where violence had brought life to a sudden end centuries before the Romans fully controlled the region. At first, the hand itself was fascinating enough. Then researchers noticed several lines scratched across its surface. They were not decoration. They were writing. One word, Soryaneku, immediately caused excitement because of its apparent connection with modern Basque and has been interpreted as something close to good fortune. The remaining inscription is far harder to understand. Researchers believe the hand may once have hung near the entrance of a home, perhaps offering protection or carrying a ritual meaning now lost. That leaves us with a remarkable thought. Someone wrote those words expecting another person to understand them. 2 millennia later, we can read the letters, but their full message still refuses to return. Number 9. The Códice Borgia's shadowed cousin. The manuscript seems to promise something historians would desperately want. A record of the Aztecs traveling from the legendary Aztlan toward the world they eventually established in central Mexico. Its painted scenes follow migrations, conflicts, rulers, and places across a long stretch of time. Then the problems begin. The Sex Borgini, as the document has been identified, carries Nahuatl writing that appears separate from the original illustrations, possibly added considerably later. That gap has followed the manuscript for years. If the pictures genuinely preserve an older tradition, they could hold memories from a period where reliable records are painfully scarce. But if later hands altered the story or produced the whole thing afterward, then we are reading someone's version of history rather than history itself. Lorenzo Herves helped bring attention to the document in Europe, yet attention never settled the argument. The paintings remain there, offering dates and journeys with remarkable confidence. The uncomfortable part is deciding how much of that confidence they deserve. Now let's move to number 8. The Longmen Grottoes. There are big archaeological sites, and then there's Longmen. For centuries, people carved straight into the limestone cliffs beside China's Yi River, eventually leaving behind more than 100,000 Buddhist figures, 2,300 caves and niches, and around 2,800 inscriptions. Work began around 493 CE and continued under different rulers for generations. Monks paid for carvings. Wealthy families commissioned their own. Emperors did the same. And the difference in scale is incredible. Certain Buddhas are barely larger than a finger, while the famous Vairocana Buddha rises about 17 meters above the ground. Empress Wu Zetian commissioned that enormous figure during the Tang dynasty in the 7th century. Sadly, later centuries weren't kind to Longmen. Statues were damaged, heads disappeared, and pieces ended up overseas. But enough survived to show just how much work went into this place. Well, we're not talking about just one monument here, but generations of people cutting their beliefs into an entire cliff face. Number 7. The Hollow Tower of Dun Telve. Dun Telve has been sitting in the Scottish Highlands for nearly 2,000 years, and we still cannot say with confidence why anyone needed a tower like this. More than 30 feet of its stonework survives, with 2 walls running around the structure and narrow spaces between them for stairs and passages. Calling it a fortress once seemed reasonable, except the building does not behave like one. There are no arrow slits or battlements, and little about its layout suggests serious warfare. A wealthy family may have lived here, with the enormous broch serving as much as a statement of importance as a home. Finds from Scottish broch sites also point toward surprisingly distant connections, including goods that traveled far beyond northern Britain. But Dun Telve left no explanation of itself behind. We inherited the walls almost intact enough to understand the building, but not quite enough to understand the people who wanted it. Number 6. The ring fort nobody used. The only question about this place is also the hardest one. Who built it and then never moved in? Ismantorp, on the Swedish island of Land, wasn't some half-finished project abandoned halfway through. The walls went up, streets were planned, and 95 houses were arranged inside, along with space where a community could gather. But archaeologists found almost nothing suggesting families ever settled there. No everyday mess, no generations of belongings, none of the usual traces people leave behind. The little evidence of activity that does exist appears to come from much later. So why build all of it? Perhaps Ismantorp was meant for ceremonies, or maybe it served as some kind of meeting place. There's even the idea that it helped inspire other forts across land. But those explanations still leave us staring at the houses. Someone spent serious time building a place for people who, for whatever reason, never made it their home. Number 5. The Stone of Scone. The coronation of King Charles III in May 2023 brought an ancient Scottish relic back into the spotlight, the Stone of Scone, better known as the Stone of Destiny. For centuries, this plain block of sandstone has been tied to the crowning of Scottish kings, although its earliest story remains tangled in legend. King Edward I seized it from Scotland in 1296 and carried it to Westminster Abbey, where it later became part of English and British coronations. There is nothing particularly royal about its appearance. The stone is roughly cut, weighs around 335 pounds, and bears little more than a simple cross. Yet few objects in British history carry quite the same political and symbolic weight. Even its movements have sometimes been surrounded by secrecy because of fears of theft or protest. Stranger still, doubts have long existed over whether Edward actually took the original stone. If Scotland fooled him with a substitute, the true Stone of Destiny may have disappeared centuries ago. What do you think about it? Let us know. Number 4. Ancient Roman portable sundials. We usually picture ancient Roman wealth through villas or expensive clothes. Apparently, there was another way to show people you had money: carry time around in your pocket. Archaeologists have recovered a small number of portable bronze sundials, dating mainly to the later Roman period. They were cleverly made, with adjustable parts that could account for different latitudes as their owners traveled. There was only one awkward problem. Using one properly was not exactly simple. The owner needed enough knowledge of the sun's position, location, and season to get anything useful from it, and Roman hours themselves changed in length throughout the year. That has left researchers wondering how often these devices were genuinely used. Perhaps wealthy travelers relied on them. Perhaps owning such an unusual piece of technology mattered more than its accuracy. With so few surviving examples, certainty is difficult. Number 3. The Mongolian pendant well. About 42,000 years ago, someone in what is now Mongolia picked up a piece of graphite and gave it a rather familiar shape. Researchers uncovered the tiny pendant at the Tolbor 21 archaeological site in the Kongai Mountains, and once they examined it closely, the resemblance became difficult to ignore. It has a long body, a rounded end, and even a carefully cut groove that researchers interpreted as a urethral opening. In other words, this may be the oldest known phallus-shaped object ever discovered. And yes, prehistoric people apparently had their own version of questionable jewelry. But whether its owner saw it that way is another matter. Wear marks suggest the piece may once have hung from someone's neck, although nobody can tell us why. Fertility symbol? Personal ornament? Something with a meaning completely lost to us? That uncertainty is what makes this little object so interestingly amazing. Number 2. The Bluefish Caves Bones. A collection of damaged animal bones from Canada's Yukon has caused a surprisingly large argument about when humans first reached North America. The remains came from the Bluefish Caves, and several carry marks researchers identified as cuts made by stone tools. Dating placed certain specimens at roughly 24,000 years old. If those marks really came from human hands, people were living in this part of Beringia thousands of years earlier than the once dominant Clovis first picture allowed. The bones belonged to animals including horses and other large mammals that shared the Ice Age landscape. Researchers have proposed that a small human population may have survived for generations in a Beringian refuge, while enormous ice sheets blocked movement farther south. Yet those people left frustratingly little behind. No settlement appears beside the bones to tell us who they were, how long they remained there, or what eventually became of them. We are left with cut marks in ancient bone. Number 1. The Dolmen of Guadalperal. Back in 2019, people discovered the Spanish Stonehenge. No, it wasn't actually Stonehenge, although one look explains the nickname. A brutal summer had drained Spain's Valdecas Reservoir enough to expose the Dolmen of Guadalperal, a 4,000-year-old monument that had spent decades beneath the water. More than 100 granite stones appeared as the shoreline pulled back, many cracked or leaning after years of being submerged. The dolmen had originally stood on dry land near the Tagus River until a dam project flooded the area in the 1960s. What happened there thousands of years earlier is harder to pin down. Burials have been suggested, while another theory connects the place with trade and travel along the river. Whatever its role, researchers now have another problem: time. Whenever drought exposes the stones, they can be examined, but the opportunity rarely lasts. Rain eventually fills the reservoir again, and this prehistoric monument disappears beneath the water once more. If you found this video interesting, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.